I have for so long talked about the ability to connect lies in being interested, not interesting. And
Yeah,
so many people think it's the other way around. They think that you walk into a room and the more interesting you are, the more people will talk to you.
yeah,
And that is great if you're that attractive that you're drawing everybody to you, that's super great. But for the average person, for 95% of people out there, being
yeah,
interested and truly giving of your time, your energy, your interest to somebody allows them to come back to you. But the skills, what you're describing is you're finding ways that you can become more successful by the way you learn, not just the way um, that other people receive that information. And you're helping people really cope with things they probably, I mean, think of how included you felt in the room. You described as you were asking, as people were asking questions, that you were almost shaming yourself that you weren't thinking of these questions and you felt excluded. As you found the pattern, as you found the opportunities of
yeah.
where these questions were go, the trends, you started to feel more included, like you were just one of the group. Then you were out in front of them. Now you're a leader in a room full of people. It's such a transformative moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think to me, what I've also realized is, let's say if I hear this statement, be interested, not interesting, kind of focus on being interested. And then I think to myself, okay, well, what's the process for doing that? Because, okay, that sounds really good, but if I don't have a process for doing it, I can't execute on that. I can't actually become interested. And so what I realize is that to become interested, I need to experiment with questions. How do I experiment with questions? I listen to the questions other people are asking, and I repeat those questions, but I don't just repeat them when I'm in conversation. I tune into the cues. Like, what is it that, like, am I feeling like, ugh, I can't believe I asked that? Or am I like, wow, this is really great. This is leading to some really interesting things that I'm interested in. And so it's almost like, this experimental process of, it's like I used to think like, why don't the questions just populate in my mind? It just doesn't work that way. But I can be like an acute observer of other people and observe their questions. It's actually a pretty interesting adventure, to do that. Like to go out and actually be like, all right, today I'm going to listen, I'm going to tune in and focus my attention on the questions that people ask around me. And I'm going to take some notes, and write them down. And then when I'm in a social setting the next day or whatever it is, that evening, I'm going to try out some of these questions, but I'm going to tune into how do I feel and which questions really connect with what I'm most interested in. And by engaging in that process, I've realized that I've been able to develop the skill of being interested.
How do you execute this in your life with your family and in your own world? How have you taken these skills and turned them into something that you're doing every day, not just for research purposes and for sharing, but for your life?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is creating space in my life to be able to be open to the pain points of the moment, right? And so what I mean by that is that in various, let's say, settings, let's say I'm meeting with students in the lab, or I'm having a conversation with a family member, or I'm creating, I mean, and this is something I'm actively working on. And so it's like, I'm trying to create space. And what I mean by that is like, I'm not, my mind is trying to focus in on, and to listen, right? And to be, I hate to say like be present, be in the moment, but it's kind of like, that's what I mean, just because
Yeah,
it's like
it's
said
real
so
though. It
often, but
makes
like,
sense.
to just kind of listen and be able to react with all of my senses and whatever my mind is sort of taking me based on that. Because so often I feel like we're so busy in our days and we do things back to back to back that we have all these movies that are playing in our minds at any given time, and we're not able to actively listen. And so I have all these practices that I do and rituals, and they're constantly changing, so that I can try to focus my attention, and so that I can actively engage in development of skills that I'm really interested in developing, be very intentional about it. So just for example, like one of the things, I'll give you actually a few things that I do. One is when I walk outside, I cycle through my senses. So as I'm walking, we have 2 dogs, and as I'm walking the dogs, I hone in on individual senses. Like I'll say sight, and I'll look at the texture of the bark on the trees, and I'll look at the tops of the trees and the shapes of the trunks, and I'll look at the clouds. And then I'll say hearing, and I'll listen for the birds and the rustling of the wind in the leaves. And I'll say touch, and I'll slow down and feel the clothes on my skin. I'll feel my heels hit the ground, and I'll feel the wind against my face. And I've been practicing this for a while now, as it's so easy to do it as well, because otherwise I'm just ruminating. My mind's just like, my head's down, and I'm just like playing whatever's going to happen next, or what just happened, or, whatever the kind of like, sort of, I don't know, rumination du jour, whatever it is. So, but if I'm trying to hone in on what ends up happening is now as I walk outside, I see the texture of the bark on the trees, and it catches my gaze, and it holds it. Like it's not like my eyes aren't jumping around as they used to, as much. And so I'm able to focus more. When I'm eating, I try to close my eyes for a few bites, and I try to just feel like what that shift is, because all of a sudden I start to realize that it's like when I breathe in and then I breathe out, it's when I breathe out that I actually can taste it even more, like if I breathe out of my nose, like I taste it, like it's even more, and I'm like, wow, that's so interesting. And again, it's like focusing in on the sense of taste, right? And smell. And so to me, there's all these rituals. The other thing I've actually just started doing at night before I go to bed is, and this is just totally experimental, right? I have actually never spoken about this before, but what I do now is I pick like a creature in nature, and like, let's say like a butterfly, or it could be a bird, or it could be a snake, or it could be, whatever it is. And I visualize myself standing on the back of that creature and what that experience might be like. Right? Just as I'm falling asleep. And it actually, I feel like it's been helping me to actually fall asleep, because my mind gravitates towards what happened during the day, what's going to happen tomorrow, and all these things that just are not productive or useful for me to be thinking about as I'm trying to fall asleep. Kind of keeps me awake, it keeps my heart rate elevated. And so I try to, so to me, it's like all of these rituals that are so easy for us to practice in our day for me, it's helped hone my attention. It's helped me to create space, to be open to making changes, and to be listening for cues, and to, it's giving me sort of like on-ramps, an opening the door, opening the window to being able to really feel what's happening with my interaction with my environments as I'm kind of, interacting with my family or at work or, whatever I'm doing.
If you like clips like this, I have a similar clip here. And if you want to watch the full video, click here.